important interview questions. Okay, so in that the first one is, what is Node.js? Where can you use it actually? So Node.js is an open source cross-platform JavaScript runtime environment and library to run web applications outside the client's browser. It is used to create server-side web applications. Okay, I mean to say, before the Node.js actually, there actually the client side JavaScript is nothing but it's a client side technology which is used to execute the programs only at the client side actually. But once the Node.js is coming to the real picture actually, then by using Node.js we can able to create server side web application also actually. I mean to say, server side web resource program. Node.js is a perfect for especially data intensive applications and it uses an asynchronous event driven model. You can use IO intensive web applications like video streaming sites. You can also use it for developing real-time web applications, network applications, general purpose applications, and distributed systems, etc. But except CPU intensive applications. Okay. And why we use Node.js actually? Because Node.js contains many features actually. Because even though it is a single-threaded, it can work as a multi-threaded technology. Okay, so that's the reason most of the companies, I mean to say, most of the technologies are going to integrate with the Node.js environment also actually. That is, Node.js makes building scalable network programs in an easy process actually. Some of its advantages include it is generally fast, it rarely blocks actually, I mean to say, because of the non-blocking IO. It offers a unified programming language and the data type also. And everything is asynchronous. I mean, whatever the modules are there in Node.js, all are the asynchronous. Okay? And it yields great concurrency. How does Node.js work? The third question is, how does Node.js work? Basically, a web server using Node.js typically has a workflow that is quite similar to the diagram. I mean to say, here it is I mean to say, same as the event loop mechanism actually. So that once actually basically the Node.js process, clients can send the request to the web server to interact with the web application request. It can be non-blocking or blocking. Second one is that is querying for the data or deleting data or updating the data, whatever it may be. Node.js receives the incoming requested and add those requests to the event queue. Because I already told you, Node.js is performed with the help of event loop mechanism, actually event-driven mechanism, right? So the requests, whatever the requests are coming from the client, the requests are then passed one by one to the event loop. So it checks if the requests are simple enough or not to require any external requests. If the event loop process simple requests, I mean non-blocking operations such as IO or polling and returns the response to the corresponding client action. Okay. And if it is any blocking thing out there actually, then it goes for the next thing, and whatever the blocked things out there are, that can be recognized with the help of callback concept actually. Okay. So why Node.js is single-threaded actually? See that Node.js is single-threaded for asynchronous processing. I mean to say, by doing asynchronous processing on a single thread, I mean to send some typical web loads, a more performance and scalability can be achieved instead of the typical thread-based implementation. Okay, basically we are following the multi-threaded implementation in all other technologies, either it may be JSP or PHP, whatever it may be. Okay, but even Node.js is a single-threaded, mainly it is for asynchronous processing actually. Okay, by doing asynchronous processing on a single-threaded and the typical web loads, more performance and scalability can be achieved instead of the typical thread-based implementation. Okay. And what is meant by callback in Node.js? See that callback is a function. I mean, so within the function, we are going to pass another function. The callback function is called after a given task actually. After a given task. It allows other code to run in the meantime and prevents any blocking. Okay. So by with the help of callbacking only, we are performing the non-blocking operations. Okay. So because it allows other code to run in the meantime and prevents any block. Being an asynchronous platform, Node.js heavily relies on callback. All APIs of Node are written to support callback. And the next question is, how would you define the term IO? IO, the term IO is used to describe any program, operation or device that transfers the data or from one medium to other medium. Okay? Every transfer is an output from one medium and is an input into another actually. Okay? The medium can be either physical device or network or files within a system. I mean, in the IO, the data is continuously flowing actually with the help of streams. How is Node.js most frequently used? Because Node.js is widely used in the following applications like some real-time charting applications or Internet of Things applications or complex single-page applications, real-time collaboration tools, streaming applications, especially microservices architecture. What are the two types of API functions in Node.js? Basically, Node.js supports two types of API functions in Node.js. Those are one is asynchronous, I mean, it's a non-blocking function, and the second one is synchronous blocking function. Blocking function. Okay, because asynchronous is nothing but here the data can be executed in non-blocking way. Actually, it never waits for the data to return actually. Okay, because based on the callback function, we are going to achieve this mechanism. And synchronous is nothing but it block the functions actually. If any data need to be comes from any file or etc., it need to wait up to that time actually to get the data. After that, it move into the second task execution point. Okay. Explain asynchronous and non-blocking API in Node.js. I already told you all Node.js libraries APIs are by default those are the asynchronous actually, which means they are also non-blocking. A Node.js based server never waits for an API to return data. Instead, it moves to the next API. After calling it, a notification mechanism from a Node.js event responds to the server for the previous API call. Okay, I already told you the same point actually, that is in a synchronous process, the Node.js API never waits for the data to return it. Actually, simply move into the forward direction actually. So meantime, a notification mechanism from a Node.js event responds to the server for the previous API call actually. What is REPL in Node.js? We just worked with that one actually, right? So that is the REPL is nothing but a virtual machine, one kind of VM actually. So that REPL stands for read, evolution, print, loop, and it represents a computer environment. It is similar to a Windows console. Okay, Windows console. So there we are just going to work with different JavaScript expressions or Node.js sample code, right? What are LTS releases? Why are they important? LTS, the full form is actually long-term support. LTS releases receives all the critical bug fixes, security updates, and performance improvements. LTS version have community support and maintenance for at least 18 months actually. So that's the reason it is a good for to use active LTS or maintenance LTS released in production actually. Okay. So importance of LTS version is actually once a current release that become line, current release line becomes LTS actually. So no new features or breaking changes will be added to that release. What are the difference between Git and GitHub? Git is a version control system of distributed nature that uses to track changes in source code during software development. It aids in coordinating work among programmers, I mean to say multiple developers. But it can be used to track changes in any set of files actually. Okay. So the main object of the Git is, or Git or SPE point of view, data integrity and support for distributed non-linear workflow. GitHub, nothing but it's a Git repository hosting service actually. Okay. Plus it adds many of its own features. GitHub provides a web-based graphical interface. It also provides access control and several collaboration features. Basic is task management tools for every project. Okay. And one more question is, what is a repository on Git? Repository in Git is a place where Git stores all the files. I mean to say, you already worked with local repository as well as remote repository also. Git can store the files either on the local repository or in the remote repository. Okay. What is commit message? The command that is used to write a commit message is basically we're just writing git commit hyphen message actually. Okay. So hyphen a or hyphen m, that is a flag. By saying hyphen m on the command line instructs git to commit to the new content of all tracked files that have been modified. Also mention you can use git add file before git commit a, and I mean to say if new files need to be committed for the first time actually. What is npm actually? What is npm? See, the npm stands for Node Package Manager. It is default package manager for JavaScript programming languages. npm is used for installing or updating packages and modules of JavaScript actually. Okay. What are the modules in Node.js? Basically, modules is nothing but those are the reusable block of code actually, that it contains block of code actually, so that can be reusable in many ways actually, so whose existence does not impact other code in any way actually. So it is not supported by JavaScript actually, but modules were introduced from the ES6 onwards actually. I mean to say, modules are important for maintainability as well as reusability and namespacing of code. When we are using required in Node.js, require is used to include modules from external files in Node.js application. I mean to say, importing the dependencies. Okay. It is the easiest way to include a module in Node. Basically, require is a function that takes a string parameter which contains the location of the file that you want to include. It reads the entire JavaScript file, executes the file, and then proceeds to return the exports object. Basically, we are just writing the syntax with a simple function name that is required, and after that we are just specify the name of the module actually. Okay. And one more question is, explain module.exports in Node.js. The method are variable defined in modules, cannot be directly accessible by the outer world. That means what you need to do is you cannot call a module member from the external file. In order to access a module member, we need to export the functions or variables of modules using the modules.export method. Otherwise, we are unable to access that one. Here I just give one simple example, that is greet.js. So here I just created one simple variable. I mean, it's a greet equal to function of console.log of hello world. Actually, what my intention is, I just want to utilize this information outside of the world. Actually, you just need to write one simple thing, that is module.exports equal to greet. Okay. So if you want to use this greet.js in app.js, what you need to write is variable greet equal to require of dot slash. We just need to specify the name of that JS file name, that is greet.js file, and after that you can simply call it is greet up. Then what happened? It is directly going to execute this hello world information. I mean to say, for this program the output is hello world. How can you import external libraries into Node.js? External libraries can be easily imported into Node.js using the following command.
that is variable HTTP equal to require of HTTP. I mean to say some of the core modules you no need to install actually. We just need to utilize that one by just writing variable HTTP equal to require of HTTP. So this command will ensure that the HTTP library is loaded completely along with the exported object actually. Okay. And because this is the core module actually. I hope you are clear with all these points. Okay. How to publish own packages in Node.js. At that time, your simple answer is to publish your packages to npm for private packages and unscoped packages. You just need to work with npm publish command. Okay. What is thread pool and which library handles it in Node.js? The thread pool is handled. I mean, already told you, Node.js internally having C++ internal thread pool actually. So that this thread pool is handled by the libub library. Libub library. This is very important interview question at the time of interviews actually. That provides support for asynchronous IO based operations such as file system, networking, and concurrency, whatever it may be. How to create server in Node.js. So the http.createServer method turns your computer into an HTTP server, and there we are just using HTTP create server method that creates an HTTP server object, and this HTTP server object is into the port actually. Okay, this is the process to create the server in Node.js. How to set response headers in Node.js. So basically we are just writing response.write head of or otherwise set header actually. On the right head we are just going to specify the content type as well as the value actually. Okay. So what is the use of URL module in Node.js? The URL module provides utilities for URL resolution and parsing point of view actually. Okay. What is the Express package? Okay. So Express is it's Express package, not Express.js package, Express package. So this Express is a flexible Node.js web application framework that provides a wide set of features to develop both web and mobile applications. So what are the uses of request response objects in callback? The request object represents the HTTP request and has properties for the request query string, parameters, body, and HTTP headers, and so on. The response headers main purpose is actually that is used to handle the HTTP response that an Express app sends when it receives the HTTP request. What are the features of Express? So Express.js provides middleware in order to respond to HTTP or RESTful requests. So it is also possible to define a routing table in order to perform different operations, and it also dynamically renders HTML pages based on passing arguments to the templates, organize the web application into an MVC architecture. These are the some of the features. Okay. What is the middleware functions in Express.js? Middleware is a function so that performs some uh, preparatory or commonly used action before passing request to main handler. I already told you that middleware functions are used to execute the in between request and response cycle. Okay. In our previous video tutorial, we covered this middleware also actually with a detailed concept actually. Okay. The template engines, how to use them? Simple. The template engine allows you to use static templates files in your application to render dynamic HTML responses. So to work with the template engine, you just need to write app.setOfViewEngine. So in our previous video tutorial, we worked with the pug actually. Okay. So what response.end function do? Response.end function ends the response process. It can be used to quickly send response with no data or when you to signal that you write last chunk or buffer data. I mean to say After the response.end method, you are unable to write any message. Okay? You are unable to print any message onto the browser actually. Okay? So what is Express generator? Express generator is a command line tool, is a utility to generate Express.js apps basic skeleton. Before project generation, you can configure template engine, style sheet, all these things actually. Okay, I mean, so that will generate automatically. Okay? What is a router? Router object is an isolated instance of middleware and routes. Router is a basic class to implement REST API website pages actually. Router dot method dot there we are just passing the path and callback function. You use it to add the route. Okay, and the what is the use of next in Express.js? Next, it passes management to a consecutive matching group or a operate to the pass management. I mean to say the next function is used to pass the request or response life cycle to the next proper handler. Otherwise, it keep on hanging in I mean, in the next method itself. If you are not specifying the next method actually, then it's stuck at the middleware itself actually. Okay. What are the HTTP methods supported by REST? So there are different methods: get, post, put, delete, options, head method. But most of the cases we are just working with get, post, put, delete methods actually. We already implemented one simple REST API with all these things actually: get, post, okay, as well as delete method actually. Because we don't need to bother about the put method actually. The purpose of the put method is I mean, so update the things actually. The same thing we can do it by using the post method also actually. In the post method, we can write the same logics actually. What is a callback function? See, there many times we are repeating this word, that is callback function, callback function. So what is meant by callback function? Basically, a callback function is passed as an argument into the another function and is called when the function completes. The simple example is, for example, function. I'm just passing do work with success and failure. So if any error is coming, then it shows the failure message. Else condition, it shows the success message. In the files also we work with callback function, right? With two parameters. One is in terms of error or success message. I mean, so data. Okay. What are promises used for? Why we need to use promises? Basically, the promises are used for asynchronous programming. Callback also for asynchronous programming. But they allow JavaScript programs to be written in a non-blocking fashion. So just as using normal callbacks do. But without the, I mean to say, when we are keep on using callbacks, then sometimes we are facing the problem of callback hell actually. So to overcome the problem, we are going to use the promises actually. Okay, so promises, callbacks, all are for asynchronous programming. Asynchronous is nothing but non-blocking way. Okay, what are arrow functions? So I mean, so many times, I mean, we work with this arrow functions actually. So those are from ES6 arrows. We call it as fat arrow functions, fat arrow functions. Arrow functions are the new way of making functions in JavaScript. A arrow function takes a little time making the function and has clear syntax than a function expression. I mean to say whatever the programs I try to implement, all are with the arrow function only. How simple it is actually, otherwise we need to write function and the parameters, okay, all these things actually, but without the function keyword, function expression. I'm just going to specify only with the arrow, fat arrow notation actually. Okay. What are template literals? What are template literals? Template literals are the new way of making strings in JavaScript. We can make template literals by using the back tick or back quote symbol. I mean to say, for example, see there, if you want to write a multi-line strings or whatever it may be, basically we are just using back tick. Back tick is nothing but that operator is there at the below the tilde operator in our keyboard. Can you please check it? I mean to say, top of the tab keyboard, tab button, there is one. I mean to say, one more button is there. There tilde operator is there. So along with the tilde, there is one thing operator that is called back tick or back quote. Okay. Here we are just writing the information in the back tick. Okay. So like this, and here we can able to append the some. I mean, we can perform some string interpolation also for this type of syntax actually. So this is called template literals. Okay, template literals is nothing but the new way of making strings in JavaScript. Okay, so that we can make template literals by using the backtick or backquote. Okay. The next question is, what are promises? I already told you promises are one way in handling asynchronous operations in JavaScript. So before the promises, basically we are going to work with callbacks actually to achieve the asynchronous programming. But promises, it represents the value of asynchronous operation. Promises was made to solve the problem of doing and dealing with asynchronous code. Before the promises, we are using the callbacks actually. Okay, so it's just the callback to overcome the problems of callback hell. By using promises, we can write some clear syntax of callbacks, multiple callbacks actually, by using the promises. I mean, so multiple promises. We almost, I mean, say in our previous video tutorial, we worked on promises. There I showed you what exactly the promise is and how to, what exactly the promise is, chaining, all these concepts actually. Can you please see that one? Okay. This is the story of promises. What are the states of promises? Basically, there are, I mean, say the promises having three different states. The first one is pending state. So the initial state, this is the initial state of a promise. So the promise outcome has not yet been known because the operation has not been completed yet. The second state is fulfilled. So the asynchronous operation is completed and successfully with the resulting value. That is called fulfilled state. And we call it as resolved also. Resolved also. Basically, the promise syntax contains two parameters. One is resolved and other one is reset. Fulfilled is nothing but it indicates the resolved state. Resolve callback function parameter. Resetted is nothing but the asynchronous operation has failed. The reason on why it is failed actually, I mean, it's just going to, if any error comes, actually it's just going to print the registered state values. Okay. And after that, the next question is, what is async await and how does it work? Async await is the new way of writing asynchronous or non-blocking code in JavaScript. So it built on top of promises. It makes writing an asynchronous code more readable and cleaner than promises and callbacks. I mean, so there is some hierarchy actually. First they used callbacks, and after that JavaScript people moves into the promises in ES6, and after that they introduced one more new concept, that is async await. I mean to say, all these are for asynchronous program only, but we can simplify the things with the help of one after another actually. I mean to say, in terms of fallback, we can write some clean code with promises. So even though even though promises are writing clear code, more separation, I mean more cleaner code, more simple syntax, we are just going to work with async await. Okay. And the next question is, what are the ways to deal with asynchronous code in JavaScript? So that answer is callbacks, promises, async await. I already told you these three things were used to work with the asynchronous programming. Okay, asynchronous programming. First one is callbacks. Later they they introduced promises. After that they introduced async await actually. Okay, and one more question is, how do you open a file in Node.js? So for that, the simple answer is we are just using one simple method, that is open method, fs.open. Okay. List out the packages that are required for consuming the REST API in Node.js. So for that, the answer is HTTPS module is there, request module is there, Axios is there, got is there, super agent, node fetch. All these things are used to work with the consuming REST APIs. So with the, in terms of callback, in terms of applying the callbacks, or in a promises way, or in a async await way, and all the three modes actually I implemented these six modules actually, like HTTPS, request, Axios, got, super agent, and node fetch, all these things actually. What is the Node.js module required to communicate MongoDB database? In case if you are working on Node.js, actually, there actually I worked with the driver name that is MongoDB. Okay. What are the methods are used to store documents in MongoDB collection from Node.js? For that, actually, for the insertion operation, we use two methods actually. One is insert one method for inserting one document into collection. Insert many method for inserting multiple documents into collection. What are the methods are used to query the documents from MongoDB's collection from Node.js? To retrieve the data, there also we work with two methods. One is find one method to query the one document from the collection. Even multiple documents matches the given criteria. But the find method is used to retrieve all the documents that matches the given criteria, because the find method returns bulk results actually, it's a cursor results actually, okay? And the next question is, what are the methods are used to update documents of MongoDB's collection from Node.js? To update point of view also, there we work with two methods. Basically, one is update one method and other one is update many method. Update one method is used to update a single document of MongoDB's collection, but update many method is used to update multiple documents of MongoDB's collection. And the next question is, what is the use of upset option in MongoDB? So this one is very important actually, because see there, with the help of upset option, if it's set to true, in case if when we are trying to check the when we are trying to perform some update operation, for that what we need to do, first we need to check it actually whether the proper document is there in our collection or not. If no matching document exists for the bulk, then it mixes the functionality of an update with an insert operation. If the related document is not there in our collection, then it insert it actually. If it is already there, then it simply updated that document. And the next question is, what are the methods are used to delete documents of MongoDB's collection from Node.js? So for that, actually, basically, we are working with two methods. One is delete one and other one is delete many methods. So delete one method is used to delete only one document from collection, but for delete many method is used to delete multiple documents from the MongoDB collection. Okay. And the next question is, what is mongoose used for? Mongoose is an object data modeling library. For MongoDBs and Node.js, it manages the relationship between data, provides schema validation, and is used to translate between objects. So in code and the representation of those objects into MongoDB. Okay. So in our Express application also we worked with this ODM library, that is mongoose. And the next question is, what is handlebars used for? Handlebars is a simple template language. It uses a template and an input object to generate HTML or other text formats. I mean to say, handlebar templates look like regular text with embedded handlebars expressions actually. What is the difference between MongoDB and MongoDB Atlas? MongoDB is the NoSQL database, stores data in JSON-like documents that can vary in structure, offering a dynamic, flexible schema actually. I mean to say MongoDB, I mean to say here what my intention is, MongoDB is nothing but that is a local database. MongoDB Atlas is nothing but which is a cloud-oriented database actually, global cloud database service. So that is built and run by the team behind the MongoDB. How to fix MongoDB deprecation warnings? So when we are using the MongoDB, basically we are getting some warning messages actually. To fix those all deprecation warnings, we just need to write some set operations. I mean to say mongoose.set, we need to pass use new URL parser value is true, and unified topology, use unified topology is true actually. We need to set those two values true actually. So then we can overcome those warnings actually. So those warnings will never be in your application actually. Okay. What is MySQL? Basically, MySQL is a multi-threaded, multi-user SQL database management system. Formerly, MySQL was initially owned by the for-profit firm MySQL AB actually. But after that, the company was acquired by Sun Microsystems, and then Oracle bought Sun Microsystems actually. So at present, Oracle owns MySQL. I mean to say after the Oracle database actually, MySQL also the same thing. I mean say maintains RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. Why do we use MySQL database server? Because the reasons are MySQL server is free to use for developers and small enterprises. And MySQL server is the open source actually. MySQL database server is very fast, reliable, and easy to use. What is the Node.js module required to communicate MySQL database? For that, the simple answer is MySQL is the required module for us. How do I connect to MySQL with Node? The simple thing is you just need to create one object. So there one method is there, that is create connection method, variable connection equal to MySQL.create connection of. There you need to pass the config details. I mean to say host as well as username as well as password as well as database, all this information. Okay. Next, how querying data in MySQL database from Node.js. How we are going to write the querying data? So for querying point of view, we are simply writing connection dot query, otherwise db dot query, whatever the object we created for connecting to MySQL. So there we are just calling one simple method, that is the query method. Based on that, you are just going to pass the required command, I mean query that is required to perform some specific operation, and one callback function, error comma result. So error can be used to print the error related information, and results can be used to print the exact information based on the query execution actually. Okay. What is REST Web Services? The full form of REST is actually, REST is the full form. I mean to say full form is representational state transfer. Representational state transfer. I already told you REST is an architecture style. for developing application that can be accessed via the network. I mean, say, over the network. Over the network. I mean, to see that. So here, whatever the APIs we are using in our application, so like in the routes.js page, see there. So this API can be utilized by, I mean, say by keep on running this backend, I mean, this RESTful web services or not actually. I mean, so the communication is possible over the network or not. So if I'm trying to stop the services, actually, am I able to access the service? For example, stop the service. Okay. I'm just going to run the application that is like Rohan at the rate of gmail.com and Rohan at the rate of 1234 or 123. See the login. It keep on, I mean, say rotating actually, that it shows the site can't be reached actually because it is unable to recognize that endpoint. It is unable to recognize that endpoint. See that it shows that error connection. I mean, it's a connection reset actually. Okay. So we will get some error actually. That's the reason we call it as REST API is nothing but REST representational state transfer. So we are passing the information from the server to client actually. So the REST is an architectural style for developing applications that can be accessed over the network. Okay. REST architecture style was brought in light by Roy Fielding in his doctoral thesis in the year 2000. I mean to say here the point is, I already told you, REST API was introduced by Roy Fielding in the year 2000 actually, okay, in the year 2000. And REST is a stateless client server architecture actually, okay. REST is a stateless client server architecture where web services are resources and can be identified by their URIs. Okay. So that is here also, can you please check it? Whatever the RESTful web services we created, actually, every web services can be identified with the proper endpoint. I mean URI or not actually. Okay. So that is the point actually. I mean to say REST is a stateless client server architecture where web services are resources and can be identified by their URIs. Client application can use HTTP's GET method or POST methods to invoke RESTful web services. So REST does not specify any protocol to use, but almost all the cases we are going to work with either HTTP protocol or HTTPS protocol actually. Okay. For example, see there. So now I mean to say here, can you please observe here? For example, when I'm trying to access this RESTful web services actually, so this time I'm trying to access with by using post actually. Am I right or not? Okay, post or get to access that API services. That is the point actually. So client application can use HTTP's get or post methods to invoke RESTful web services. Okay. So REST does not specify any protocol to use, but almost all the cases we are going to work with the HTTP or HTTPS protocols. Mention some key characteristics of REST actually. The answer is, the first thing is REST is stateless. I mean to say the server has no state or session data actually. With a well applied REST API, the server could be restarted between two calls as every data is passed to the server. So can you please observe the point? The server could be restarted between two calls, as every data is passed to the server. Web service mostly uses post method to make operations, whereas REST uses get actually to access resources. In our application actually, as per my requirement, so I just work with two, I mean to say methods actually, that is request.post method, as well here also I just worked with the post method actually. Okay. And what is the difference between AJAX and REST? So in AJAX, the requests are sent to the server by using XML HTTP request object. So the response is used by the JavaScript code to dynamically alter the current page actually. So AJAX is a set of technology. It is a technique of dynamically updating the parts of UI without having to reload the page. Basically, we are using AJAX actually to reload instead of to reload the entire page, we are just going to reload the specific component by using the AJAX component, right? I mean to say AJAX eliminate the interaction between the customer and server asynchronously. Okay, but instead of AJAX, now we are going to work with the REST actually. REST requires the interaction between the customer and server. I mean to say client and server communication. Okay, REST have a URL structure. I mean to say the request response pattern can be resolved around the use of resources. REST is a type of software architecture and a method for users to request data or information from servers. So REST requires the interaction between the client and server. Okay. And the next question is actually, what are the advantages of REST web services? So basically, we are using RESTful web services for using the HTTP protocol by the support of HTTP protocol, right? So these multiple technologies, I mean, whatever we are using in current IT industry, most of the cases for data change point of view, we are using either JSON or XML format, right? Okay. So REST, why we are using REST is nothing but REST also can be worked with HTTP protocol, and it's a lightweight protocol. And REST methods, so I already told you that 4 methods especially we are using. So that is get method, post method, put or patch method, delete method, whatever it may be. These REST methods can be tested easily over the browser actually. Okay. And one more important question is, what is a resource in RESTful web services? Resource is nothing but the fundamental concept of RESTful architecture. I mean to say resource is an object with basically a type, relationship with other resources, and the methods that can be operate on it. Okay. So these resources are identified with their URI, I mean to say endpoint. Okay. HTTP method they support and request response data types and format the data. Okay. And the next question is, what is the purpose of a URI in REST-based web services? Basically, URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. So each resource in REST architecture is identified by its URI. I mean to say, we already implemented some application, right? So there, when we are trying to sign up our pages, actually, there we are working with one endpoint that is API/register. So this is called URI. And in case if you are login with your proper credentials, there we are using /API/login. That is also one endpoint actually. Okay. So URI is nothing but the full form is Uniform Resource Identifier actually, which is used to indicate the URI, I mean it's endpoint. Okay. The purpose of an URI is to locate a resource on the server hosting the web services. Okay. The basic example of this one is protocol. I mean to say HTTP:// service name. I mean to say either localhost or any IP address / resource type, and after that we are passing the resource ID actually. Okay. And one more question is, what are the HTTP methods supported by REST? I already told you basically the HTTP methods supported by REST are get method, post method, put method, delete method, options method, head method. But we are working with only 4 methods. So options and head are I mean it's a very rare case actually. I mean to say get method can be used to request a resource at the request URL. It should not contain a request body as it will be discarded. Maybe it can be cached locally or on the server. Post method can be used to submit information to the service for processing point of view. It should typically return the modified or new resource. The main user put method can be used to at the request URL, it updates the resource. Delete can be used to all the request URL. It removes the resource. Options, it indicates which techniques are supported. Head, about the request URL, it returns meta information point of view. Okay. And one more important question is, what is the difference between put method and post method? Put puts a file or resource at a particular URI, and exactly at that URI, if there is already a file or resource at that URI, put changes the file or resource. I mean to say, the put main basic advantage of put is actually for updating the information. If there is no resource or file there, then basically put can also be work as a post method. I mean to say, it inserts. Post sends data to a particular URI and expects that resource at that URI to deal with the request. If the web server at this point can decide what to do with the data in the context of specified resource actually. Okay. So put is for the update. In case the proper resource is not there, it can be act just like a post actually. The post can be used to create the, I mean to say, new things actually. Okay. What is the use of accept and content type headers in HTTP request? Accept headers tells the web service what kind of response client is accepting. So if a web service is capable of sending response in XML and JSON format, and client sends accept header is application oblique XML if it is XML response. If in case JSON response, we are just passing application oblique JSON. So content type header can be used to tell server what the format of data is being sent to the request actually. I mean to say, if content type header, application oblique XML can be used to pass the XML. I mean to say, this header is useful in terms of HTTP post and put request point of view. Okay. What is authentication and authorization? I mean to say, in authentication process, the identity of users are checked for providing access in the system. While in authorization process, persons or users' authorities are checked for accessing the resources. I mean to say, authentication is nothing but basically we are just going to log in with proper credentials, username and password. So even though for username and password point of view, that is called authentication actually. Authorization is nothing but whether you are able to access the specific one or not actually, that is called authorization actually. I mean to say, here when you are trying to access the courses page actually, first you are unable to access that one actually up to your login. Okay. So that is called authentication. After authentication only you are authorized to access that courses actually. Otherwise you are not. I mean to say, authentication is done before the authorization process, whereas authorization process is done after the authentication process. Okay. And what are cookies? What are cookies? So cookies is nothing but basically cookies are small text files that are stored on the user's browser. So they contain a unique identifier which is normally referred to as a cookie ID. Okay, so these cookie IDs are nothing but just normal character strings that websites associate with the user's browsers. Now, using these cookie IDs, the websites differentiate between your browsers and the others. Okay, I mean to say, so once you allow cookies on a particular website, then you are allowing the website to store your information on your hard disk, such as browsing topics, geographic data using location access, or anything which later can be reviewed by the websites. I mean, so here also, for example, see there without accessing this one actually, when I click on, when I'm just storing this one, for example, see that here I'm able to access the Gmail directly actually because I stored my username and password credentials and cookies actually. I mean to say, at that time I'm directly able to access the email actually. Okay, and what are the authentication phase for Node.js application? For that question, the answer is basically we are going to perform the authentication in Node.js application in different ways. One is HTTP basic authentication, cookies, session, passport, JWT. All these are authentication process point of view. Okay. What about HTTP basic authentication? HTTP basic authentication is a mechanism in which the server challenges anyone requesting the information and get response in the form of a username and password. So this information, so the information the server receives is encoded with base 64 and passed it to the authorization header. Okay. So, and the next one is, what is the required module for cookie authentication? The simple answer is cookie parser. Cookie parser module is required for us. And one more question is, what is session? Through cookie, we can provide a way to return user information on the browser and include it any request. But there are some limitations at the time of cookies. One of them is their inability to hold a large amount of data. But we use cookies together with a session to track user information on the server side. So cookie is nothing but it's a browser side, but session is nothing but it is a server side actually. So here the cookie holds the session ID, and whenever a request is made to the server, the server retrieves the session ID and use it to get the user information on the server. By default, the session information is stored in memory and get wiped out whenever the server is restarted. Okay. And the next question is, how Node.js manages session in applications? Express makes use of the Express session node package to manage the session, and session-file-store to store session data in a session file. Okay. So you can better to read about more about Express session and Express file store. You will get some more idea. Okay. And next question is, what is passport.js? Passport is an authentication middleware for Node.js. As it's extremely flexible and modular, Passport can be unobtrusively dropped into any Express-based web application. So a comprehensive set of strategies supports authentication using a username and password. There's a Facebook, Twitter, and many more actually. Okay, and the next question is, what are CSRF attacks? CSRF, the full form is cross-site request forgery. Request forgery. Okay. Cross-site request forgery. What is this actually? Basically, it is an attack that tricks the victim into submitting a malicious request. It inherits the identity and privileges of the victim to perform an undesired function on the victim's behalf. For most sites, browser requests automatically include any credentials associated with this site, such as the user's session cookie, IP address, window domain credentials, and so forth. Okay. So therefore, if the user is currently authenticated to this site will have no way to distinguish between the forged request sent by the victim and the legitimate request sent by the victim. Okay. What is JWT? JWT, the full form is JSON Web Token, is an open standard, RFC 7519. So that defines a compact and self-contained way for securely transmitting information between parties, and it's a client server as a JSON object. So this information can be verified and trusted because it is digitally signed. So JWT can be signed using a secret, using the HMAC algorithm, HMAC, or a public private key pair using a RSA or ECDSA, a DSA algorithm or RSA, whatever it may be. Okay, encryption, DSA algorithm. Okay. What do you understand by microservices? For that, the answer is microservices are more appropriately microservices architecture in an SDLC approach. I mean to say SDLC is nothing but software development lifecycle approach. Microservices can be used as one type of architecture. So before the microservices, basically we are just trying to implement all the applications with monolithic architecture actually. Okay. So in this SDLC approach based on which large applications are built as a collection of small function modules. So what is meant by microservices? Assume that, for example, when your applications, if 4 modules are there, so you are just trying to keep it, keep on implementing every module as a separate service actually. And you are just trying to run all the modules into separate instance actually, on a separate process actually. And you are just going to make all those things into the container actually, okay, to make it into containerization point of view. So that is the only point that it is saying. I mean to say in the answer itself actually, I'm just trying to say collection of small function modules, collection of small functional modules. Okay. So these functional modules are independently deployable, scalable, and target specific business goals and communicate with each other over standard protocols. So such modules can also be implemented using different programming languages, have their database and deployed on different software environments. Each module here is minimal and complete. I mean to say when you are trying to implement your application with monolithic architecture, actually you need to be fixed with one stack actually. Either it may be Java or .NET or PHP something actually. Based on that, you are just going to implement all the project actually. Am I right or not? But in the microservices point of view, whatever the modules you are trying to implement, you can try to implement with different programming languages from different operating systems actually. Okay. What are the main features of microservices? Microservices have the following main features actually. So one is multiple individually deployable components. As I already told you, small functional components. And service distribution based on business capabilities. And one more is DevOps implementations, technical independence, hidden component complexity to avoid unnecessary microservices dependency. So these are the features actually. Okay. What are the advantages and disadvantages of microservices? I mean to say, even though microservices are advantages, but basically it is also having some disadvantages. We'll focus on both the things. Advantages point of view, it's improved scalability, fault isolation. So I mean say localized complexity, increased agility, I mean say the model, simplified debugging and maintenance, better correspondence of developer with business users. Because all the developers are working on a simple functional components actually, right? And smaller development teams actually. For every module, we are just going to divide our development team into small teams actually. So better scope for technology upgradation. But what are the disadvantages actually? Complicated as a whole. So you need to communicate with everyone if any. So new changes are required. You need to meet with all the teams actually. And I mean to say, in case in directly the service, actually that's not a problem in any single module. So require accurate pre-planning actually. Require accurate pre-planning. So modular dependencies are hard to calculate. I mean to say, maybe we are using one module that maybe need to be updated into some other things in future. Less control over third-party applications. And modular interdependencies are challenging to track actually. And more opportunities for malicious inclusions. Complete end-to-end testing is difficult and deployment challenges actually. List the differences between monolithic SOA, and microservices architecture with an example for each. So in monolithic architecture, all software components of the application are assembled and packed lightly. I already told you all are in a single package actually as a single unit. SOA is nothing but service-oriented architecture. It is a collection of services that communicate with each other through simple data passing or activity coordination actually. Microservices is nothing but same like SOA. I mean, say microservices architecture is a collection of small functional modules, but these functional modules are independently deployable, scalable, target specific business tools, and communicate with each other via some standard protocols actually. Okay. And the next question is, what are the fundamental characteristics of a microservices design? So the fundamental characteristics are services split up and organized around business functionality. Separated modules handled and owned by different development teams, decentralized framework, maintenance of respective modules by respective development teams. Separate modules may be maintained by different databases. I mean, maybe one database with some other, and one module maybe need to be interacted with some database. So modules in a microservice architectures are separately deployable. So they can be updated, enhanced, or deleted without disturbing the entire architecture actually. In the monolithic architecture, what happens if any one module corrupted actually, that will be impact on other modules actually, okay? And real-time monitoring of the application. What are the main challenges when you are implementing microservices deployment? The challenges in microservices can be both technical as well as functional. From the point of business, actually, the main challenges are to require heavy investment and heavy infrastructure setup is required. Excessive planning for managing operations overhead, staff selection and maintenance, communication, different microservices in the application. I mean, so in case if anything required some communication, we need to keep that related module into this one actually. I mean, it's some other module. Okay, component automation, application maintenance, configuration management, heavy operational overhead, deployment challenges, testing and debugging challenges, because the testing and debugging on every module actually. Okay. So what are the different strategies of microservices deployment? So multiple service instances per host. I mean, so I already told you actually we are just going to create multiple instances, right? I mean, so run single or multiple services instances of the application on single or multiple or physical virtual host. Service instance per host. I mean to say you can run one service with some per host point of view. Service instance per container. I mean, so you can keep run each service instance in its respective container. And serverless deployment. I mean, so package the service as a zip file and upload it to the lambda function. The lambda function is a stateless service that automatically runs enough microservices to handle all requests. And the next question is, how does the Docker help in microservices? So microservices, as we know, are self-contained individual units that perform only one business function. So much, I mean to say, so much so that each unit can be considered as an application on its own. So this application deployment environment and application, application development are bound with in many various aspects. I mean, say this gives rise to a deployment issues. Docker provides a static background for the application to run, thus avoiding deployment issues actually. Okay, it is in, I mean, so because we are just going to make it as a containerization tool, it is called as. It reduces overhead and deploys thousands of microservices on the same server. So Docker ensures that an application microservices will run on their own environment and are entirely separate from their operating. And what is the role of RESTful API in microservices? A microservices is based on concept where all its component services require to interact with one another to complete the business functionality. So this requires each microservices to have an interface, RESTful API to provide a logical model for building these interfaces. So it is based on the open networking principle of the web. Okay, this I mean so it serves the most critical enabled of microservices. What is mean by Docker? Docker is an open source lightweight container technology. It has gained widespread popularity in the cloud and application packaging world. It allows you to automate the deployment of application in lightweight and portable containers. And one more question is, what are the advantages of using Docker container? So offers an efficient and easy initial setup. I already told you we just need to install the Docker and maintain it. Allows you to describe your application lifecycle in detail, simple configuration, and it interacts with the Docker Compose. Documentation provides every bit of information. Okay. So, and the last question is, what is Docker Hub? Docker Hub is a cloud-based registry that which helps you to link to code repositories. Link to code to repositories. It allows to build, test, store your images in Docker Cloud. You can also deploy the image to your host with the help of Docker Hub actually. Okay. Yeah, that's about this session. Thank you.